Nowadays, people have no hesitations in throwing out their fantasy football rankings. But how do you know if your rankings actually make sense or not? I see people all the time out there going, De'Von Achane, he's my RB5 this year. Or maybe like Puka, he's gotta be a top 7 wide receiver in fantasy football. Kenneth Walker, y'all be sleeping on Kenneth Walker. He's a top 12 running back, no doubt, in 2024. It's really easy to go out there and throw out the terms of he's my RB4 or my wide receiver 7, but I don't see anyone out there on the internet really trying to help the people. Help people figure out how to build better rankings. Because if you're going to be tossing out rankings, you better know what those players need to produce statistically in order to hit those spots. That's why today, I'm going to show you a tool that can make you a fantasy football genius. That's right, and we're gonna have some fun today as well, because I went through and I asked viewers in our community, over on the community tab and on Twitter just the other day, to submit some rankings for a few players. Now, if you've been watching this channel at all throughout the offseason, you know that we are trying to do our best to teach you this offseason, really try to help you unlock your mind when it comes to the game of fantasy football. Because if we can change the way that you're looking at the game, you're gonna be able to find way more success than you even thought was possible. So today, I'm gonna take a little bit of time and I'm gonna show you a couple different ways on how you can go about building some of your own personal projections. So that way, when you build your own personal rankings, they actually make sense. Now, if you love learning fantasy football cheat codes just like this, do me a favor, please hit the like button now. And if this video can get 1,000 likes, I'm gonna pick a random commenter from down below and give them a free 2024 fantasy football draft guide. Our guide is already live and it's jam-packed full of tools to help you dominate in 2024. So all right, let's see who's paying attention. If you're paying attention right now, hashtag genius down below in the comment section, and let's go ahead and dive in. Now, just a couple of days ago, I put a post on our YouTube community tab and on Twitter. In that post, I asked the community to rank a few players. The players that I was looking for a ranking for were the likes of De'Von Achane, Kyren Williams, Kenneth Walker, Puka Nacua, Drake London, Nico Collins, Dalton Kincaid, and Kyle Pitts. I wanted to know where the people had these players ranked. The RB what? The wide receiver what? I wanted to know. And I say that because I really wanted to gauge where the community was at with these players. Now, most of you followed the rules perfectly. Some of you had one task, and some of you just did not. And let me also just say this real quick. If a few of you posted these rankings online on YouTube, I'm sorry to say it, but you would get annihilated in the comment section. RIP your social media mentions. But I went through and I took an average of where you had each one of these players ranked. So let's go ahead and take a look at these averages. For De'Von Achane, overall, he was the average running back 10. Kyren Williams, the running back 9. Kenneth Walker, RB 14. Puka Nacua, wide receiver 9. Drake London, wide receiver 13. Nico Collins, wide receiver 17. Dalton Kincaid, tight end 4. And Kyle Pitts, tight end 7. Now, for the most part, a lot of the rankings for these players were pretty similar, but there were a few guys that were all over the place. De'Von Achane was ranked as high as running back 6, as low as running back 16. Kenneth Walker as high as running back 9, as low as running back 23. Drake London as high as wide receiver 7, as low as wide receiver 25. Nico Collins as high as wide receiver 14, as low as wide receiver 25. And then Kyle Pitts, no one knows what to do with Kyle Pitts, as high as tight end 2, as low as tight end 13. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna build some realistic projections for a couple of these guys. Let's build those projections, then turn them into fantasy points, and then use historical data to see where they would have finished at their position at that current point total. Doing an exercise like this is the best way to get the thoughts that you have in your head into actual numbers down on paper. You really need to see if your head's in the right spot when you're building accurate rankings. Because I can't tell you how many times I get comments saying, you know what, Jake, Drake London, he's my wide receiver 7. He's going to have at least 90 catches for 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. Cool, but I hate to break it to you, 90 catches for 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns is 207 half PPR points, which is barely enough for him to crack the top 12 at the position. So we can't have him as a wide receiver 7 if that's what you think the stat line he's going to achieve is. Now, I know that because I have created a pretty nifty spreadsheet that actually shows me the average points scored by position in half PPR leagues, and it's actually a section in our draft guide. If I want to know, on average, what does the wide receiver 7 score, I can go find that data easily. Now, in my opinion, this is like gold. It's one of my favorite things in the draft guide, and honestly, it's pretty freaking simple. But once you have this information at your fingertips, it really helps you understand where you should draft certain players. Now, if you're like, Jake, I want that spreadsheet, it's in our draft guide. Like I said, head over to tfhdraftguide.com right now to get yourself a draft guide. If you want one for free, you can head over to Underdog Fantasy, sign up for a new account, use the referral code Headliners when you do so, do that minimum $10 deposit. Not only are they going to give you a first-time deposit bonus of up to $250 in bonus cash, but I'm also going to send you a free draft guide as well. But all right, it's time to focus. I need you guys. I need you locked in. I need you paying attention here for a couple minutes, because once you learn how to do this, you can apply it to every single player in the NFL. But let's have a little fun here with De'Von Achane, running back of the Miami Dolphins. The viewer consensus ranking had him at the running back 10 overall. Now in 2023, De'Von Achane only played in 9 full games. In those 9 full games, he averaged 14 touches per game. We all know De'Von Achane is not some workhorse running back. We know that Raheem Mostert, he's in line to get the bulk of the early down touches. We also know that Miami just drafted Jalen Wright, another speedy running back that can handle some volume as well. So to sit here in the offseason, entering 2024, with this stacked offense that they have in Miami, we can't look at De'Von Achane and really expect more than the 14 touches per game that he saw last year when playing in full games. So if we take 14 touches and multiply it over a 17-game season, that comes out to be 238 total touches. Last year, De'Von Achane could not stay healthy on the field, and he only had 130 total touches. Now, all of a sudden, we expect him to stay healthy all 17 games and increase his volume by 100 total touches? That is not a smart thing to do. I truly believe that if we can get 14 games this season out of De'Von Achane, we're probably all going to be pretty happy. So if we take 14 games played and we multiply it by 14 touches per game, that comes out to be 196 total touches, which honestly, I think is a very fair number considering the offense they have in Miami and the amount of options that they have. So now that's going to take us to how many yards does he gain per touch? Now, there is no way that once again we can sit back and expect De'Von Achane to average 7.8 yards per carry like he did in 2023. That number right there, totally crazy and is not sustainable for a career. For reference purposes, CMC finished second behind De'Von Achane, and he had 5.4 yards per carry. That is a difference of 2.4 yards per carry. Absolutely crazy, not sustainable, not something you can rely upon entering a season. But let's just say that De'Von Achane is still going to dominate in this area, and he still finishes higher than Christian McCaffrey. Let's give him 5.7 yards per carry for this upcoming season. When it comes to receptions now, De'Von Achane averages 7.3 yards per reception. That right there is a very realistic average for running backs of his skill set. So the 5.7 yards per carry and the 7.3 yards per reception comes out to be an average of 6.5 yards per total touch. So now it's just simple math. If you take 196 touches and then multiply it by 6.5 yards per touch, it comes out to be 1,274 total yards. Converted to half PPR fantasy points, it's 127.4 fantasy points. Now, last year, De'Von Achane averaged 2.5 receptions per game. I really don't see that number increasing much once again here in 2024. So 2.5 receptions per game multiplied by the 14 games played comes out to be 35 receptions, or in half PPR scoring, 17.5 fantasy points. So really, now it's only down to touchdowns. Now last year, De'Von Achane scored a touchdown once every 12 touches. Once again, that number is absolutely crazy. It's not normal, not even close to normal. Just because Raheem Mostert and De'Von Achane last year scored touchdowns, it seemed like at will. Those numbers are highly inflated and cannot be relied upon yearly. For reference, CMC, he averaged a touchdown every 16 touches, and even that number right there was super crazy high. Coming into a season like this and expecting anything more than 1 touchdown per 20 touches is absolutely reckless. So if we take the 196 touches and divide it by 20, it gives us 10 total touchdowns, or 60 fantasy points, 6 points per touchdown. That also gives us now a total stat line: 1,274 total yards, 10 total touchdowns, and 35 receptions. That seems very realistic for a player of the caliber of De'Von Achane, but that comes out to be 204.9 fantasy points. Now, based off statistical history, over the last 3 years, 204.9 fantasy points would be good enough to make him the running back 13 overall. That is 36 points shy of the running back 6 that someone had him ranked before this exercise. And if he scores just 1 less touchdown, he's going to be flirting with running back 15. So as you can see, when you put the numbers down on paper, it's not easy to just finish as the running back 10. Because honestly, if you sat there and you looked here at the end of the year and be like, you know what, De'Von Achane had just under 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, 35 receptions, you're probably not going to be that disappointed. That's a super solid year, but you will have overdrafted him at running back 10. That's why when I see a lot of people putting De'Von Achane pretty high in their rankings, I get a little bit worried. Now, I can't sit here and say that De'Von Achane probably has the highest upside maybe of almost any running back in the NFL, but he also has like the highest risk of any running back in the NFL as well. That's why you'll see here throughout the offseason, we probably have De'Von Achane a couple spots lower than most people. But all right, what about a wide receiver? Because you got to do them a little bit differently than you do a running back. For wide receivers, we don't really care about carries on the ground. We only care about that receiving volume. So let's talk about Drake London. The current viewer consensus rank on him was the wide receiver 13. Now, over the last 2 seasons, Drake London has averaged 114 targets, 71 receptions, 885 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns per year. He actually performed better 2 years ago in his rookie year than he did just last year. But I think we all know what the problem is. It's not Drake London. It's been bad quarterback play, and it's been Arthur Smith over the last couple of years. So let's not hold his production really against him the last couple of seasons. Now let's build a projection here. Let's start off with targets. Now we have to remember that Drake London is not the only show in town in Atlanta. Sure, he's going to see a slight increase in targets, but it's not going to be some astronomical number. Don't forget, they still have Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. They just brought in the likes of Rondale Moore and Darnell Mooney as well. I think if we pencil in Drake London for right around 130 targets, that is a great place to start, and it's more than a 10% increase over his career average. Now, obviously, if he gets 130 targets, he's not catching all of them. For his career, his catch percentage is 62%, but we have to think, with Kirk Cousins now under center, that number is going to go up. It's going to be the best quarterback that Drake London has ever had. Now, Justin Jefferson with Kirk Cousins had a catchable target rate of right around 75% at the time they left Minnesota, but their chemistry was built over time. I want to bump the number up, but I'm not going to go too high. Let's put it at 70% for this exercise. 70% of 130 targets comes out to be 91 receptions. I think everybody would be happy if Drake London had 91 receptions. That comes out to be 45.5 fantasy points in half PPR scoring. Now, over the last 2 years, London has also only averaged 12.6 yards per reception. but Kirk Cousins loves himself the deep ball, and that's where Drake London could excel this season. So I think it's safe to say that the yard per reception number this year is going to increase for Drake London. Even if it's sitting right around 14 yards per reception, that's not some crazy number. It's going to put him somewhere right around the top 25 to 30 wide receivers in the league. So 14 yards per reception multiplied by 91 receptions comes out to be 1,274 receiving yards, or 127.4 fantasy points. So really that only leaves us touchdowns now to figure out. Something we haven't seen from Drake London very much over the last couple of years. He only has 6 total touchdowns over his last 2 combined seasons. But let's just see, what if we just give him a handful of touchdowns? 5 touchdowns. Let's do that and then go from there. Which means our overall stat line is going to be 91 catches for 1,274 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. That's a total of 202.9 fantasy points and half PPR scoring. Looking back at history, I can see that 202.9 fantasy points is good enough to make him the wide receiver 13. Now, the wide receiver 13 is right where the community currently has him at their consensus rank. Now, for those that had him ranked as high as wide receiver 7, he would still need an additional 29 fantasy points to reach that number, and that is no easy ask. But having him penciled down in your rankings as the wide receiver 13 seems like it's pretty doable. I think we can all look at that stat line of 91 catches for 1,274 yards and 5 touchdowns as being super realistic. So penciling him down as the wide receiver 13 doesn't seem like a bad spot to have it. So as you can see, there's a few different ways of going about and building these projections. But if you don't follow a process like this when you're building your rankings, you could be putting expectations on players that even you don't think that they could hit. And that right there is a huge problem that so many people don't even realize when they're playing fantasy football. It's why I love this spreadsheet so much. Truly a great reference for those like leading up to their drafts. If they really want to try to look at a few players, it's a great tool to use. I mean, build some projections. Look at some of the players you do like. Look at some of the players you don't like. Build some realistic stat lines. Figure out what those fantasy point totals will be. See when it's really a good time to draft them or not. Now, I don't watch a lot of other fantasy content, if I'm being completely honest. I don't want other people's opinions swaying the way that I have done things for so many years. But I can honestly say that I haven't heard of anyone else out there trying to teach this to the people. I'm literally trying to give you the keys to the car right now because I feel like information like this is straight fire when it comes to your fantasy football drafts. Now, if you agree with that, do me a favor and hit the like button if you haven't already, and consider subscribing if you're not subscribed. Please subscribe now if you want to dominate fantasy football, because I'm looking forward to a great year with the community once again. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here for the day, though. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your day, but most importantly, do your part to make the world a better place.